Brown Santa came a day early. I've been using, this is actually mislabeled. It says there's a lithium-ion battery in here, but there isn't. It's actually a different product in here, which is similar, but is not actually dangerous. It's a capacitor-based product. But I have the Amazon card, and I, use it for everything and Amazon, and they give you a ton of reward points back. I think it's like 5% on everything that's Prime and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I've had that for a while and I had a ton of points saved up. So I kind of spoiled the Jeep, and I got a couple of things that were in need. So first of all, this thing is awesome. This I saw, actually, I've seen it quite a few times online. I saw it eventually. It's ironic, actually, that there's a Jeep you can see in the background there. I saw that Scotty Kilmer had actually done a review of this, and this is actually a really great automotive jumpstart option because it's a batteryless version, which is not a battery. So focus to the packaging, learn what a capacitor is. Super capacitor, not lithium ion. And what this does is it basically plugs into your car. You can plug it into the cigarette lighter outlet, or you can plug it directly into the battery, even if the battery in your vehicle is completely dead. And what it does is it charges up a series of supercapacitors, and what it will do, you can even charge it via USB. It just takes way longer. Once the capacitors are at full capacity, then they can discharge at 700 amps. And that's the peak current. The max voltage is 15.5. So this can actually jumpstart your car without having to be charged ahead of time. So for people that are overlanding or might be bugging out on their own and typically carry jumper cables, well, that can't help you unless there's another car. And then if you carry a battery jumper, like I used to, one of these, the batteries don't tend to keep a great charge. And if you want them to work well for that size engine to be able to have enough power, cold crank amps as it's referred, then you usually have to get a much bigger one. And they're really expensive. Those can get up to like $250, whereas this is $120. And because it's a capacitor, it's not the same degradation or loss of use over time that you get from batteries. Batteries have a certain number of cycles that they can experience before they degrade, whereas a capacitor typically has tens of thousands of cycles. So this will pretty much never die for the rest of my life. I'll be able to use this to jump everything that has basically an engine. I think it can go up to like a 5-liter engine that's petroleum, and it can do 3.6 liter diesels. I think they use a little bit more charge for it. But that's one item. Then I had to order a bunch of this really nice high quality nylon webbing. You can get webbing in different types. There's polyethylene, polypropylene, nylon, and so on. Nylon is the least amount of stretch to it, and it has the most lifetime use, I would say. It's the stronger of the materials like this. And I need this webbing material. It's basically just a strap. And I got a couple different packs of it because I had a couple different uses. And I needed some more of the thin stuff because I ran out. And what this will do for the Jeep is behind the hanging bags on the inside of the Jeep, which we'll get to in a second, are these gaps that sit. This is the webbing material. So you can see it in the sunlight. Pow. I needed an extra one up here because I made all of these. And then this one is actually made out of a polyethylene, and you can see, or polypropylene. And it's got a lot of sag to it and bunch. You can see the weave isn't as tight compared to this one. It's much higher thread count, it's higher tensile strength, and it doesn't stretch as much and wear. So this has to be replaced with a thin one. But I got this really thick stuff so that I can actually use it for those chairs that go when I'm driving. These bags hang down, obviously, to the side like that. But there's a good amount of space behind them in the glass. So I'm actually going to cover out and black out the windows with some sunbrella fabric that I've tucked up there. And it leaves me all this space. Typically, my stools or my camp chairs go in here, and then I have a blanket that actually stands up. It's in a vacuum seal bag that goes in the rest of there. So I just tuck it in there. But these aren't anchored on the bottom. So if you take a corner a little bit faster, or even just kind of let the Jeep rock when I drive out my driveway, there's a pretty big transition on this side, so the Jeep does a little wobble thing. But when that happens, if this comes out a little bit, those fall. And that's a huge pain in the butt. So what I've done, when I built these shelves in the back there, I also put this runner that came along the top here. It's plastic and cut out to the shape of the top attachment point, so that I can actually screw in the webbing at the bottom, put a clip somewhere along the way, and then tie the top end to the roll bar, so it leaves a webbing that will pin things against the side of the top. I like to try and keep all of the stuff in the Jeep out of the interior space, because this is the sleeping and dog space for the most part. Dogs get to use it for more than anything. But yeah, that's what the webbing is going to be for. It's going to pin up on the sides here, and I'll do a video once I've installed all that and all the clips in there, and then that will just spin up and around there. So that's the webbing end of it. And that's also fun because, you know, organization. This stuff's actually pretty cheap on Amazon. Obviously everything is, because Amazon. And then some upgrades for the Jeep, because I'm an aesthetics junkie. I actually have the 2013 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. And the difference between the 13 and 15 year models, or everything previous to the newer ones, is there are a few little nuances. One of which is the front turn signal lights on mine are amber, and they actually make, in the newer 15 and above, this is clear with an amber light, and this you can get like that. But because I have the fogged LED headlights, I kind of wanted everything to match and have a nice fogged LED side marker and front indicator lights. So I found a set of each, and these lights just kind of pop in and plug in and play. Just plug into the original harness just like that, and they'll look black or darkened or smoked or whatever you want to refer to it as, but the bulbs, as you can see inside, are amber. And a lot of people actually buy, there's the anti-flicker attachments that you can get to go in between there for the Jeeps that have standard light bulbs and that are switching to LEDs. But there's also an alternative option to that. Jeep actually wrote into the software of the program of the computer that runs the Jeep the ability to switch between the two, because you could get LEDs from the factory. So it's actually just a preference you have to change in the computer. And there's an app called JScan, which allows you to switch to LED headlights or side markers and not have the flicker happen without actually having to add extra parts. This is a lot cheaper when you do it this way. And the app also gives you a lot of other features where you can monitor your transmission temperature. You can disengage and engage your differential lockers at speed. There are tons of other features. You can turn off daytime running lights and so on. It's an extremely robust OBD2 scan system, as well as specific to Jeep, has a lot of features for changing the parameters about the Jeep itself. I actually used it after I put my lift on and put bigger tires on. It allows you to tell the computer what size tire you have, so it changes all the shift points to the proper space, because when your tire diameter is larger, or obviously speed relative to the rotation of the engine isn't what the vehicle was anticipating. So you have to change that so that your speedometer and your tachometer, or your speedometer and your shift points line up properly. And so it allows you to do that. Also, if you change your differential gears, it allows you to change the ratio for those. But this is the meat and potatoes of it, except for the one thing I've been very excited about to get for a while. It is the Airlift 1000 HD. This is made for a Ram 1500, which is also a Mopar vehicle, as you can see the truck right there. But with the Mopar 4-inch lift specifically, this is the size airbag that it uses. It's the same one. And this gives you up to 2,100 pounds of load leveling. So I have a ton of squat in the rear end. I have those drawers, I have the table in the back, more specifically the tire on the rear, which is extremely heavy. And inside the tire, I carry about 10 gallons of water. And at roughly 8 pounds per gallon, you're running an extra 80 pounds plus probably a 65, 75 pound tire. and wheel combination, and then all of the stuff in the decking surface and all of the sides. Now, why that's important in the squat is that the weight in mine, and this applies to folks with rooftop tents a lot too, you can get higher tension springs and reduce your ride comfortability, but there's just going to be times when I want it stiffer if I'm towing a trailer, because then the back end can be a little bit more taut and not doing a wheelie if there's a little bit too much tongue weight relative to the weight that I've already got in the back of the Jeep. So I don't want it to unpack my whole Jeep just to tow a trailer. That's just silly for me. And I also like the idea of being able to independently change the pressure from side to side. A lot of people talk about the JK lean, which is the JK has a tendency, even when it's completely unloaded from factory, it'll lean one direction or the other just a little bit. And sometimes that can be because the seating of the springs themselves isn't correct. When you spin them around, there's a particular orientation that they have to go in, which can cause that. And sometimes it's just the weight of the vehicle and the looseness of the springs. I am sitting, again, 4 inches taller from factory, and it gives a lot more room for play in the springs for that weight, and my center of mass or gravity is much higher relative to what it was factory. So what this will allow me to do is put an airbag inside the coil in the rear, and it has a line that comes out, which you plumb to the rear of the vehicle, and with that, you can push up to 65 PSI in the HD versions. The traditional 100 series or 1000 series, I think it's 35 PSI. And if you're looking at getting these and your lift isn't the exact same lift, if you're not running a 4-inch Mopar lift on your Jeep, this is probably not the one for you. Call them. They are the most helpful customer service I've ever spoken to. They're super attentive. They know exactly what they're doing. There are 2 measurements you're going to need for the specs that you need. You want to measure it when your Jeep has no weight inside it, but the springs are installed. So you don't want a loose spring that's just hanging around and measure it, and you don't want to have your vehicle compressed with the weight in the rear already or squatting. So what they'll want is the inside, from the inside edge of the spring to the opposite inside, so how big of a thing you could fit in between them, and then from the top to the bottom, and they'll tell you what airbag fits for your vehicle. And they have every size combination you could ever imagine. Call them up. They're super, super helpful. Like I said, they are awesome. I can't wait to put these in and kind of show you what it does and how it works. They also sell all of these different auxiliary things where you can inflate and deflate them from in the vehicle. I'm not really going to get into it that excited. I'm just going to put the 2 Schrader valves on the rear of the vehicle and then level the vehicle out and then use it at the pressure that I feel appropriate. I'll probably have to run it at like 30 to 40 PSI just to kind of lift the 2 inches of squat that I've gotten from loading the Jeep down. The other part of it is the vehicle that you're using for overlanding might not always be on level ground. So if you wanted to level, for instance, my driveway slopes down that way. If I were to park horizontal to the driveway and then inflate the downhill bag more than the uphill bag, so if this tire were over here and the other tire were behind it, you could then flatten the vehicle out on a surface without actually having to put rocks under your tires or things like that. You'll see a lot of overland folks that, you know, when they're out on the trail, or even for my instance, out on the beach, there's a lot of times where I'm not going to be on exactly even ground. And if I'm going to be out there for a day or longer, then it's going to be nice to be able to level the vehicle and also be able to control the ride comfortability and the squat that happens in the rear of the vehicle from either too much weight in the back of the vehicle or from towing. So I'm going to install all these things and then do a whole separate video on that. But I'll put the links for all these kind of things if anyone's interested in this stuff. The nylon webbing comes with the clips. This unit I'm really excited to do a review on. I'll do a full review on that, as well as a full review on this, and then kind of show you what I've done with the install of these lights. I would do an installation video, but I really don't think it's necessary. They literally have like 3 clips and a little plug, so it's not going to be too wildly difficult to figure out. But yeah, that's Brown Santa. Thanks, Amazon. There is no lithium-ion battery, but I appreciate your concern, and let me get to installing.